Hello, I'm a soft skills trainer from Department of Career Planning and Development, and I will be discussing on the topic telephonic conversation and etiquette. As we understand, different languages, different way of communicating, different way of handling a conversation. So telephonic conversation is different for different people around the world. Most of the times, the students ask us, "Ma'am, how do we answer the management? How do we answer the HR? Ma'am, how do we talk to the person standing in front of us? Ma'am, is it a corporate way of talking to somebody else? How do we communicate via telephone?" Basically. Now, there are various paths, various points which are considered. For example, if the students are going in for multinational organizations, that means you may be working with people from Spain, from France, from Australia, from Germany. So basically, different people, different way of answering, different thought process, and the etiquettes which are required while discussing details with them. Now, telephonic conversation, as it suggests, of course, the conversation that you have on telephone. Now, please be very careful. The person is not standing or sitting in front of you, so you don't know what is their reaction to whatever you've said. For that, you need to know about different cultures, different thought process. Let's just give you certain examples. If I'm in India, we generally say namaste, sat sri akal, and we've got different languages around India itself. So our greetings start with the specific word from that very language. If I talk about Britain, we generally start with hello, how are you? Now, in China, if you know, even if you are there in a meeting, it is considered inappropriate if you do not take your phone out when somebody is calling you and you do not answer them. Again, as I said, different countries, different nations, different thought process. Now, there are different, when we're talking about telephonic conversation, let's just talk about etiquettes. Etiquettes, the manners. Again, as is there is a difference between telephonic conversation, there is also a difference between etiquettes. Etiquettes can be associated with the way you eat, the way you sit, the way you talk, the way you move. All those things come in etiquettes. Your body language comes in etiquettes. Now, let us give you some example about etiquettes. Those will include your dining etiquettes. Those will include your social etiquettes, right? For example, in Britain, if you're moving along the road and somebody hits you, or you get backsplash from somebody, you have to say sorry even if it is not your fault, because it's considered inappropriate if you don't say so. If somebody is giving you something, you just simply cannot take it from them. You need to say thank you, and the other person has to say my pleasure or some or the other kind of word. If you don't say so, they would consider it inappropriate and they would consider it against the manners and etiquette. In Italy, if I talk about the dining etiquettes, in Italy, you cannot have cappuccino after food. They do not like that at all. It is against the etiquettes of Italy altogether. If you talk about Japan, you cannot slurp the noodles. Like generally when we're eating noodles, what happens is we make certain sounds while eating the same. You cannot do that. You cannot slurp while having soup in Japan. Although it's there around the world, but specifically in Japan, it is considered inappropriate. In Spain, when we talk about telephonic, don't be surprised if they start fighting with you on telephone, because it's very common. So you understand, different thought process, different etiquettes, different mannerisms. In Germany, if you're honking the horn on road, in the traffic jam, they consider it abusive. And you may be jailed for the same. So let's not do that, everyone. Let's be very careful with our etiquettes and the way we have to handle different people from different countries. Now, the etiquettes, as I've shared with you, can be of different kinds. The way you walk, the way you dine, the way you talk. But we'll be focusing more on the telephonic etiquettes today, because it is very important how you converse with somebody else. Now, as I said, you'll be working with various organizations. You'll be working with people of different age. If it is in India, it is an Indian organization, does not matter. Working with different people, different age, different cultures, different thought process, the way you communicate with them is different altogether. If I talk about MNC, working with different cultures, different age group, different experience, different thought process. How do you handle that? A very simple example is, if I talk about the family, with my grandmother or with my grandfather, I may start with namaste. With my friend, I may start with hello, hey, how you doing? Different age group, different way of communication, right? So let's just start with certain details for the hand. Now, if I talk about corporate conversation, now you may not be talking the same way, the way you're talking with your leader, the way you're talking with the employees or your peers in the organization. Now, how do I handle the same? First of all, when I call someone, it is very important to identify with them. Hello, my name is this. Good afternoon, my name is this. Most of us generally don't do that. If I talk about the organizations, we generally say, we call, we say, yes, I need to do this work. Can you help me out directly? These are not the etiquettes which are considered good, especially if you are dealing with clients of different countries. So, if we need to get proper benefit for the corporate we are working in, it's very important, everyone, to take care of the same. Identify yourself. Who are you? Right? Now, address the caller by his name in a courteous manner. Now, this has certain contradictions, or rather, I would say, different nations have different thought process regarding the same. If I talk about South America, if I talk about Britain, generally, they want you to address them as ma'am, sir. Generally, they want you to address them as such. If I talk about certain other nations, such as America, they do not find it offensive if you call them by name. It's okay, right? You can call, yes, John, this is me calling, how are you? So, just an example, if I talk about Britain, they do not consider it good, or etiquette-wise, they don't consider it a good etiquette that you call them and say, this is hello, John, etc. So, again, different nations, different way of calling them and having a telephonic conversation. Now, the third point, keep the conversation brief. Again, everyone, for us in India, we need to have details. If I'm calling any organization, for example, I need to recharge my phone, or I'm calling a certain organization and I have certain complaint with them. So we get into full-length conversations with them. This is what is not happening. This was a problem. This was a date this started. This is how it should be done. Why aren't you doing something of that sort? Right? So full-length conversations we start doing with them. Now, the information in that conversation cannot, or I would say, may not be altogether relevant as well as we progress while we are talking to them. So, In countries like Russia, in countries like China, in countries, they feel that if you are wasting your time on conversation, then you're not efficient enough. So what they want you to be assertive. Start talking, finish it up earlier. Specifically in Italy, they don't want you to take much of their time. So they will specifically say yes, and when you start discussion, you cannot go into long length sentences with them. That is what they find offensive. So let's just think before we're talking to somebody. Germany, they do not want you wasting their time much on telephone. You have some work, call them up, talk to them, be assertive, to the point, and finish up the conversation. Not something beyond that. Right? So, keeping the conversation brief. Never be impatient. That is a very important part when you're working in corporate, in an organization, because you may be into, let's just say you are into sales and marketing. Now each and every department is interconnected. If I talk about an accounts, they'll be looking at the people of the organization, they'll be looking at the leaders of the organization. So again, they'll also be working with people of different age groups, different thought process, the people who will react and respond differently on different situations. Same with other departments, marketing department, same with the sales department, same with the rest of the departments. Each and every department is interlinked. So if they are interlinked, that means they need to work together. If they need to work together, that means we are looking at people who have different thought process and different way of reacting, responding. Different way of reacting, responding, that means some may be patient, some may be impatient, some may talk to you politely, some may talk to you on an average base, and some may be totally impolite. So how do we handle them? Basic word, golden word is patience. Patience, very important, because first of all, when you deal with these people, it is very important to listen to them. Listen to them. Sometimes what happens is that somebody asks a certain question, somebody has a certain problem, they start sharing details with you, or they start arguing with you, they start asking you questions, and you bring in your thought process before they even finish their question. And the answer you give is not relevant to what they have asked or what they wanted to ask, which brings in some other kind of problem. So what do? Let's just listen to them first, think about it, and then answer them. That is going to solve most of your problems in the organization. Again, never be impatient and listen carefully and do not interrupt. 3 of the lines which are interconnected altogether. For proper answering, for accurate answering, very important that you understand these 3 things. As an organization, there would be various rules that you will have to follow. When you have to follow the rules, you will have to follow certain thought process of different people as well. You will have to cater to their needs as well. So if you have to cater to their needs, if you have to cater to their thought process, if you have to cater to their work, right, why not do it in a patient manner? Now, interruption. When we talk about interruption, see, if we talk about effective communication, now do you guys know about what is effective communication? Effective communication and communication. Communication is general communication. Let's just say, I'll meet you tomorrow. Now, communication may not always be effective communication. Effective communication is when I want to share certain details with someone and the other person understands those details, my thoughts, in the same way I want them to understand. right? So for effective communication, it is very important that you do not interrupt somebody in between. Now, another part which is very important in the corporates, since I talked about different age and different experience, if you interrupt someone in between, they may not find it very good and basically offensive. More offensive they are, the more aggression it will create. More aggression it will create, more stress it will create. More stress for you, more stress for the other person. And then it may not go down well in the future as well. So it's better to listen and do not interrupt. The next thing is do not eat or chew something while speaking. Very, very, very important. I've actually heard many students, I've heard many people when they are talking on phone and there's this particular sound which comes in while they're chewing something or while they're speaking something. Now, this may create a hindrance in their communication. If I want to talk to somebody, if I'm chewing something, my voice may not be properly audible to that very person. The things that I want to share may not be effectively shared with that very person. Now, this happened with somebody in the corporate. He was trying to say something like $25,000, and while he was chewing, the other person understood it the other way, and it was something like $20,000. So basically a $5,000 difference. Again, it happens while we are talking in between, or we are basically eating or chewing in between our conversations. Please do not do that, for your clarity of voice, for other person to understand what you actually want to portray. If you wish to put the caller on hold, request his permission to do so. Now, how many of us do so? I'm not pretty sure. Most of us do. Please be very careful, specifically when we talk about the calls in which 2-3 people are involved. Right? It is very important for one person to understand that their time is also very important. Please tell them, I'd like to put your call on hold. I'm bringing in some other person on the call. So thereafter, I'll be talking to you and I'll ask that person to connect with you as well directly on the call. Very important to let the person know that that person is on hold. Now, once you've talked to the person, it is very important that you close the conversation with the appropriate greetings. If I have discussed regarding business, thank you so much for taking out your time. Really appreciate the same. We have a good day. We talk about people in different areas, different departments, talking differently. If I talk about people in BPOs, again, they would be giving an appropriate salutation according to the people they're talking to of different nations. Alright? So, please understand the importance of the same. You cannot directly just say, alright, okay, bye, not done. When we talk about proper conversations in the corporates, it is very important to close your conversation with proper greetings. Now let the caller hang up first. Most of us don't know the same. First of all, when somebody calls you, it is better to pick up the call within 2 to 3 rings. It is considered appropriate, it is considered an etiquette in which you pick up the call of the caller within 3 seconds. Beyond 3 seconds, it is not considered good in terms of business etiquette. When we talk about you calling someone and you have discussed certain details with someone, you would be disconnecting the call first. Alright? And if somebody calls you up, you would not be hanging the call in between. Very important. Most of us do not have any idea about the same. Most of us, what do? When somebody calls up, we've had a discussion, we'll cut the call, which is not considered appropriate. When we talk about missed calls, return the call within reasonable period of time. How many of us do the same? Think about it. Most of us don't. When we talk about missed calls, I may have 4 missed calls, 5 missed calls for my friends, and I'll be calling in them within 2 minutes, within 3 minutes, within 4 minutes. Let me have a call from, my leader or somebody else, and most of us will think, Acha, whenever we are free, we'll call them up. Whenever we are free may not come for another 15 minutes, another 20 minutes, another 30 minutes, or an hour, or 2 hours, or 3 hours. Please be careful. When somebody has called you, please return the call within reasonable period of time. I mean, the time you have just finished your meeting, or you just got free. If you got 5 minutes of time when you got free after that very call, please call that person up. Not considered appropriate if you keep that person waiting for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Please understand the same. Important. And a point to be remembered. If someone calls you by mistake, inform the caller politely. Now, informing politely, do we do that? I'm not pretty sure about it. If somebody calls me, I would generally tend to blast that person. That's what we do. Now, it happens once. Once I've said, no, this is the wrong number. If that person calls again, then again we say it's a wrong number. Then if it goes again and again, then the aggression starts pouring in. Please be very careful while interacting with the people who have called you by mistake. Now, certain people may call you to understand the level of stress that you can take as well. They may be people from the organization as well. So please be careful to think about what is the limit of your stress taking. They can do that as well. Please be careful regarding the same. I hope we've understood certain details about telephonic etiquette. Now, telephonic etiquette. Now, these are certain points that we need to understand regarding the conversations that you have on telephone. Very important while we are moving outside. Most of us don't understand that the voice should be audible, yet it should not be screeching. Some of us, what do? Whenever we're talking to some person, we tend to have louder voice than anybody else sitting in the area nearby you. Please do not hinder somebody's work by talking that way. So let's understand, let's bring in the crux of whatever we understood now, whatever we discussed now. Whenever we are discussing certain details telephonically, and whenever etiquettes are concerned, let us look at different people around the world. Specifically, if you are working in an MNC, multinational company, which is dealing with people from different countries, different nations, different cultures, different age group, different thought process, different languages. And since they would have different languages, different cultures, they would have different way of showing the etiquettes, or rather different way of appropriate etiquettes that they think are good enough for your conversation. So understand the people with whom you're going to talk to, understand their culture, understand their behavior, understand if I say something like X word, would it be considered good or bad? If I say something like A, would that be considered good or bad according to that very country, according to that very organization, in that very country? Very important to understand the difference in the thought process of different people around the world. The thought process of different people actually focuses and rather changes the thought process of different companies around the world. Right? So let's just work on the same and May you be able to have a proper telephonic conversation, and may you be able to have proper etiquettes in which you're able to discuss details with the people appropriately, and may you achieve all the success.